The idea for Routine kind of came about. I think we originally had an idea for a feature of this kind of sci-fi horror, like psychological thriller type thing. Had to have the idea of a crew of astronauts aboard an escape pod that's failing in space with no hope of coming home.
We came up with the story, I think, in one night, and then the next day David wrote out a quick draft of it, and then we sent it back and forth like 9 times in one day, just rewriting it. Yeah, we went through a bunch of other drafts on it.
My worries as a producer started right away as all my brain started moving around besides, oh my God, we need a space pod, oh my God, we need a location, we need green screen, and all those numbers were starting to get bigger and bigger and bigger in my head until actually Scott and David came out saying they will build this pod.
So after reading the script and talking to David about, the story, immediately we started talking about visuals. So we thought, okay, so if the pod doesn't have any power, or limited power, then it's gotta be the stars shining into the pod, the reflections of planets, of nebulas. And since the pod is just kind of slowly rotating through space, then these light sources need to move as well.
The first thing we did, we built a foam core model of the set. We built it to scale, so then we could walk through all our shots with it and move the walls and do everything we wanted to do and figure it all out small scale. When we built the big ship, we just pretty much scaled it up. We went directly off the foam model.
Eagle 1, this is Andromeda. Do you read me? Eagle 1, your last transmission broke up.
David and Scott started going through junkyards even, like to pull pieces together to start finding whatever was possible in the range of the budget that we had, because it was extremely low for this type of production that we were trying to achieve. And they started their journey.
Very fucking well. All-star of the Academy. You pompous ass Mr. Happy fucking show me. Mr. Sorry about your rank, Spencer. Maybe next time. We're still pals, right?
I have to be completely honest, when David and Scott approached me about this project and how they wanted to build this pod, I wasn't too sure how it would turn out. I was a little worried, not because I didn't have faith in their ability, but more so because I didn't think the budget could allow us to build a pod in a way that would be believable to the audience. But they pulled it off, and it was really, really impressive. It upped the production value immensely.
Scott and I had this idea that we were going to build the pod from scratch, because we love terrible ideas.
We looked around online and we tried to find like a pre-made spaceship location, and nothing really fit what we wanted to do.
We built the thing out of our garage and driveway in about 2 months. We were out there, I think, at least 6 days a week, if not 7, almost early summer in LA, so 90, 100 degrees every day.
It was in pieces and everything was on wheels. So we could store almost the whole thing inside the garage, and then every day we'd just go out to work on it and roll everything out and fill the whole driveway with work tables.
So original idea for just dressing the pod, once we had the structure up and everything, we needed electronics, we needed gauges, we needed panels, we needed buttons and lights and monitors and all these things to try and make it as realistic as possible, in a way that, even the windows in the pod were put in strategic places to accent the lighting that we ended up using.
So we needed to discuss, okay, how big is this window? Where is the placement of the window? How do we wire certain lights, practical lights that are inside, colors, and all of these things. So as they're building, we're discussing, where these lights should be, and that was also critical to the shooting of Routine, because again, since the pod doesn't have a lot of power, the source of light isn't coming from inside of the pod, it's coming from outside of the windows. So we really needed to map out and measure how big each window needed to be in order to have enough of an opening for lighting to come into the pod.
Once the structure was up and the framework was done, windows are cut out, we basically found ourselves with blank, boring walls. And we had to try and figure out what are all the characters actually doing. Piece by piece, the thing started to come to life, and it was... I just remember every single day we went out there, by the end of the day, we'd look at it and think like, holy shit, this looks like a spaceship.
We wanted like a smooth metal look. We bought a bunch of drywall plaster. We're gonna lay that over the plywood and then sand it smooth and then paint it, which was a terrible idea.
You know, we didn't want to go high key or bright on the wall because then it would be a pain to control lighting, and we wanted it to be darker. So one of the thoughts were maybe we can use, you know, dark furniture pads as the wall.
After all that, I think we finished in like 2 days, covered the entire walls with like 1,000 staples later.
It was the right choice. Not only did it help the lighting, but it just overall, it just gave a higher production value to the pod itself. Now we had texture. Now we had something a bit more interesting.
Seeing it every day almost for 2 months, I was very afraid that maybe certain things would not have been as perfect as we would have expected it to be, especially regarding the authenticity of the script. So wrong I was. 2 months later, it was there. It was incredible. We had a whole space pod, and it was actually a real set.
The biggest challenge for this prior to, you know, shooting on set during the pre-production was figuring out how to do this.
We had different colored lights on dollies that we were moving around the ship. We ended up having to put together like previs overhead schematics of the set and where the walls would be and where the lights would be around the set.
We went through this process of figuring out, you know, how to produce this unique color.
First panel I made, it was the gauge panel that's on the wall, and it's a drain cover and it's different PVC end caps.
It looks like an expensive film, but in reality, we're using things like Home Depot clamp lights.
And there's where we go to the famous pre-production day, where I think everybody was shaking, including David and Scott, that actually took a truck and put the set on it and started driving it slowly towards North Hollywood.
We came up with the idea about a week before we shot of having overhead lighting to illuminate the rest of the crew and to kind of give this ambient light where there wasn't any, because again, like the primary source of light was going to be these lights shining in from outside.
Since all the walls could roll and move away from each other, we had the plan of hanging the ceiling from the lighting grid at the soundstage.
I mean, that was the first moment I think I realized that our crew was going to be awesome, because the first thing that we had them do, a few of them I hadn't even met, was hoisting a giant, awkward, flimsy PVC ceiling up, 8-10 feet into the air by chains. And the whole time we'd built the ship out in the driveway for months, we had never seen everything together with the ceiling to see how it was going to work, because we were basically just going off of it should work, we measured correctly, and in theory all of this is going to come together. And it wasn't until we actually had the ceiling up and then moved all the walls in and stood inside of it for the first time, closed up with the lights, that we realized, I think it worked. It was simultaneously the greatest and scariest moment. I think the whole shoot was before the cameras even rolled.
Seeing the pod put together for the first time at the pre-light, gave me this big sense of relief where it was like, wow, this is gonna work. It was just a big moment of happiness and joy and relief.
We built the whole thing from scratch. We kind of built it around our script, and we would make walls that move out of the way and different kind of portholes for POV shots.
We even did a couple shots where the walls actually moved within the shot, so as the camera would move its way from outside the pod and into it, we'd have the crew there that would pull the wall open, the camera would come through, and then they'd close it, and by the time the camera came back around, you would never have known. It really helped to have such a dedicated cast and crew. Our Steadicam op, Jerry, was amazing. We've worked with him since our days in film school, like 7-8 years ago, so I was really confident in him. And I mean, he came in essentially the day before we started principal photography for some rehearsals and picked everything up super quick.
I think the only practical effects are the throat slash appliances we did. I did the sculptures in about a day, so we cast them in silicone.
The night before, after we bloodied up the pod, we came home and hung all of their suits in the garage and just started splattering them with blood, let them dry overnight. I think we had a call at around 6 or 7 in the morning, and all the cast just came over to our house. So everybody lined up in chairs and just doing, it was almost like an assembly line, putting the prosthetics on and putting all the makeup on.
I think it was only 2 hours we had, which is not enough time.
It was fun and it was kind of crazy, and it was the perfect way, I think, to end the shoot after all the first 2 days of making sure we got all the other coverage that we needed to just kind of get everybody bloody and, you know, kind of go out with a bang.
The cinematographer and the director came up with this brilliant idea that they needed a shot of Spencer, John Curley, our lead, freaking out and getting crazy inside the space pod.
So what we thought was, you know, wouldn't it be interesting at this moment if, you know, as he's ramping up and he's going crazy, that these lights are also going nuts around him. But now the challenge is, how do we do it?
So when they actually showed up asking the first time to have this shot done, of course, as a producer side, it was a nightmare.
We took the front console of the ship and just put John, the DP, and then John Curley, Spencer, inside the track.
So, you know, we had to get small little generators for each dolly and power the lights that way. So now they're mobile.
And basically had the entire crew running around in circles. You know, at the same time, I'm sitting there trying to scream over generators to John Curley because this is probably the most intense scene in the whole movie.
No! No! Bring it down, bring it down! Keep clenched, keep clenched! Stop it! Almost there!
I never saw anything like this in my whole producing time, where every single crew member, from director to DP to PA to makeup to production design, whoever was around, and it was like seeing little ants go around and like try to help each other just because the time was so tight to get this shot done.
Just being on set that day was actually, I'm sure from an outsider's point of view, it was pretty funny because it was quite the spectacle to watch.
I mean, it's the perfect way to end the shoot, for sure.
Got it. Got it.
You know, we created this world at the soundstage. There were no green screens.
Pretty much every shot in the movie was a VFX shot. We had to motion track the background first, and then we had to rotoscope out the windows, and then roto the actors if they walk in front of the windows, which most shots he does. Almost the whole movie he's pacing in front of the windows.
Scott built this miniature, this thing right here, and you know, one of the shots is we needed to pull out of the pod, and you know, we slowly keep pulling back, and the miniature gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and that's it right there. It wasn't a 3D, you know, created thing. It's there. You made it by hand.
I bought sheets of styrene, started piecing it together, figuring out as I went. So we came up with just things we had around the garage. It was a rotisserie motor that has a wheel that's slowly spinning a Lazy Susan.
You know, even the stars that you see superimposed in the film, those were stars that were actually shot by our, you know, stills photographer. From the, you know, the texture of the planets, that's something that was created organically. You know, again, you see the film and you think, well, they spent a ton of money making this happen. But in reality, it was just all passion fueled.
I don't know, to do something like this movie kind of demanded a lot more from everybody involved than I think most, at least short film shoots do. It was a really interesting and rewarding shoot.
I mean, the producers did a fantastic job. The crew was super excited and super positive to do this project because it was unique, it was different, it was a challenge for everyone.
You see the love and the passion and the strength they had to go through it and to make this happen this way. Because when you start with nothing and you end up having this product in front of you, there's when you don't need any other question about yourself. You don't need nothing else, because this is what real filmmaking is all about.
There's a certain peace in the routine, Bennett. We have to do all that we can, which keeps us sane.